You don't see the world as it is, and you've probably heard this in the metaphysical circles that you create your reality and that the world is as you think it, etc. New Age says this, right? But let's get into the actual psychology of this. So you see it through a model that you have built to survive, and most of that model was written when you were too young, too overwhelmed to even know that you were making rules. And here's the thing, that model still runs your life. And this is how the mind creates that model. So your brain is this brilliant filter. It doesn't show you everything, but it shows you what you think is relevant and what you need for survival. And then it decides that through these three main processes: generalization, deletion, and distortion. Let's walk through each of these. These processes build your internal map of reality, so what psychology calls your model of the world, and then your model becomes your rules. So here's an example how models form. Let's say that a child sits in a rocking chair, they lean back and it falls. And that's scary in that moment, right? And from that experience, the child might form a rule that says rocking chairs are dangerous. That's a generalization. It simplifies their world for safety reasons. And if the child expands upon that rule and then lumps all categories of chairs into that, then every chair becomes an unstable, unsafe thing. And now they're operating under the rule that don't lean back in any chair. And they've now limited their behavior through a rule that overgeneralizes one moment, one experience. Now imagine there's another child and they fall too, but instead of generalizing that broadly, they create a more nuanced rule that says only rocking chairs are unstable when leaned back on. So this model now, this child has a richer model. They have more flexibility, they have more choices. They can still lean back in other chairs. They just avoid it with rocking chairs. So they had the same experience, but they created a different model and a different behavior. And this is how our own belief systems form. So now here's how those survival rules limit us in adulthood. Let's go deeper here. So not all models are about chairs. Some are about feelings, vulnerability, connection. And in high stress or traumatic environments like war, abuse, or emotionally unsafe homes, you may have learned something like don't express your feelings. Because in those environments, that rule had a high survival value. You couldn't afford to be vulnerable. You had to stay small, silent, guarded. But now you're in a relationship, a romantic relationship in particular, and that same rule prevents intimacy. So you're not in danger anymore, but your model doesn't know that. You're still playing by the rules that your nervous system wrote decades ago, and those rules block the very connection that you crave. So now let's talk about the deletion and distortion part here, because they are what hold the model in place. You generalize, and then now let's say someone loves you, but your model says you're not lovable. So you will delete their affection. Your brain won't even register it. Your brain won't even think that it happened, even when it's happening. Or you'll distort it. You'll say, she's just being nice. He doesn't really mean it. And now your model stays intact, unchallenged and safe, because this is what made you feel safe. Even if it's slowly killing your joy, even if it's ruining your relationships. So you're not broken. You're just living by rules that once were useful, but no longer fit the life that you're trying to build. This isn't woo-woo stuff. This is how brains work. When people say you create your own reality, it's not magical thinking, it's model making. You generalize, you delete, and you distort information to build an internal version of reality that you live inside of. And that model writes the rules of your life until you start rewriting them, which can be done, thankfully. So that child avoiding the chair isn't doing anything wrong, but he's missing out on a whole room full of choices, and so are you. Your healing begins the moment that you realize the rule isn't truth, the model isn't reality, and you get to choose again. You do get to choose your own reality. You get to create it.